Thanks for tuning in to another show in the Next Reel family of film podcasts.
Want to skip those ads and get early access?
Become a member at truestory.fm/join and discover all the other great perks that come with it. Welcome to CinemaScope, where we rebel against the status quo and uncover the hidden depths of cinematic storytelling. I'm Andy Nelson, your guide on this illuminating journey to bridge film genres, subgenres, and movements, ultimately deepening our understanding of them all. Today, we're diving into the electrifying realm of the angry young man movement, a style that emerged in India in the 1970s and quickly became a voice for the disillusioned and oppressed. At the forefront of this revolutionary movement was the iconic Amitabh Bachchan, whose intense performances and commanding screen presence came to define the angry young man archetype. Join us as we unravel the key elements that define this groundbreaking movement, investigate its origins and cultural context, and explore how Bachchan's portrayal of the angry young man captured the zeitgeist of a nation in turmoil. We'll delve into the socio-political issues that fueled the movement and examine how its influences shaped Indian cinema and beyond. So get ready to confront injustice and fight alongside the bold heroes of the silver screen, because we're about to immerse ourselves in the raw, uncompromising, and Bachchan-powered universe of India's angry young man. Joining me today, we have the esteemed film archivist and director Shivendra Singh Dungarpur. Welcome, Shivendra.
Thank you, Andy. It's lovely to be on this podcast. We are going to talk about Amitabh Bachchan and the angry young man. I have stood outside his house waving out to him as a young man. So he's really our hero.
Having never seen, well, I take that back. I didn't realize it at the time, but I had seen Baz Luhrmann's Great Gatsby. So technically I had seen a film with Amitabh Bachchan before, but now I've seen many more, and I can see why he is as loved as he is. And, why this became so popular, because he plays angry so well. So,
yeah.
You are a tireless advocate for film preservation. You have a deep understanding of Indian cinema. This conversation here, what drew you to it? Is it just Amitabh that you wanted to talk about, or is there what's important about this to discuss, this particular angry young man, this trope that became kind of like this film movement?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it was Amitabh which drew me into films, and I think I can say it for many, many people, because he brought that hope in the 70s. He brought that there was a political turmoil. There was this time when we were going through a phase which was just before the emergency, which came into India. I was growing up. I was born in that era, and then you had these very macho films, anti-establishment, taking justice in his hand, bringing hope. Almost through a country which is fighting unemployment, which is going through strikes. There was a change in the establishment, everything which gave hope to the youth of that time. And he sort of represented that youth. And I think I was one of them, because we saw in him this massive figure who we looked up to. In fact, every word of it would make us believe that this is the world we want to be in. First time when I came to Bombay, my first excitement was to see him somehow. And I knew about that even till today. Every Sunday, it's called Sunday Darshan. Every Sunday, he steps out outside his house and waves out to so many thousands of fans, supporters, people who really care for him. And they come out from different parts of the country, some of them bringing their kids to be named by him, and
Wow.
gifts. And it's just incredible to be in that atmosphere. And I tried it when I was a young, when I was in college, when I came for the first time. And I tried it much later in my life, just to see how has the impact. And I think it was he who drew me into this whole filmmaking. Now, of course, then you start understanding and your horizons become broader. But Bachchan was and is India's biggest superstar we've ever had.
It's so amazing that it really ended up centering on this one person. And I just want to get a little bit more of just kind of painting a picture of what was going on in India at the time, so that we can have a better understanding of not just the country, politics, and everything like that, but also in the cinema that shifted when suddenly Zanjeer came out, and all of a sudden this new character was out there that meant something to the people. So how can you paint a picture of like how the country was at that time?
So in the 60s, if you're talking about just films, we had a very quintessential hero. We were in an era of romantic films and singing songs and a kind of an image which was the country was looked upon as really beautiful, and there was romance everywhere. Salim Khan and Javed Akhtar, they were two very important writers. And in fact, they both came to do different things. Salim Khan came to be an actor, and he didn't succeed as an actor. And Javed Akhtar came to be an assistant director. He wanted to direct films. They met at an office of the Sippis. Sippis are the ones who made this massive big film, magnum opus called Sholay. So they met there, and very initially in one of their initial films. I think they got together there. They were products of that time. They were people who were seeing what was happening in that country. So they came and coined this character in Zanjeer, a cop who takes, Amitabh Bachchan is playing a cop. And that was destiny, because there were three heroes before that who refused to do that role. And they had seen Bachchan in an earlier film, in a very soft film called Millie, which was essentially by a director called Rishikesh Mukherjee. And they had seen that kind of anger in him, inherent anger, inside anger, the anger which could really portray through his expressions, through his face, the kind of feeling that he could evoke in that manner. It wasn't an anger which was demonstrative, but it was an anger within himself. And they were very impressed with that. And after three heroes refusing the role, the destiny would have it that Zanjeer would have this new hero who would be playing a cop.
That he got cast.
Yeah. And then he would also fight for the justice. I would say that's the beginning of where the term was coined by a journalist as the angry young man. Zanjeer was the beginning of what was yet to come, because here he's playing a cop and he still takes justice. But later, the films had to sort of develop into the characters he played, where he was playing different roles of unemployed youth. He was representing India at that time.
Well, and I guess that's kind of just continuing along the idea of like what was going on in India, because I mean, we do see, and we'll talk about the films here in a little bit, including Zanjeer, but like there's a lot of like gangs that we're seeing. There's corrupt companies and the way that they run their companies and abuse their employees. There's a lot of that in the films. There's corrupt police officers. Like we're seeing a variety of just kind of societal corruption, and poor people struggling to kind of make it, and rich people doing everything they can to keep those poor people down. Like that really ends up being a theme through so much of this. Was that real common in India at the time? And I know, like in 1975, I think there was a big political hullabaloo. I can't remember what it's called, but there was a big thing that happened.
We had the emergency.
The emergency, right? That's the emergency happened then. But I mean, there were other things going on before that kind of led Salim Javed, this writing pair, to kind of start putting these into their stories, right?
Yeah. I mean, look at each and every film to follow, whether Zanjeer, Deewaar, Dawn, whatever films you talk about. They were crucial to what was happening in that country. Whether it was the corruption of the Bombay dockyards, or whether it was unemployed youth, whether there were factory strikes, they were going under transformations. The divide between the rich and the poor was increasing. So there was a general unrest. There was a political turmoil with political parties, and which led to the emergency also. So generally, there was a lot of despair in the country. There was also this concept which actually the government had started, called Garibi Hatao. That means remove poverty. And that was also constantly being showcased in political scenarios. Amitabh Bachchan, the angry young man, came as a messiah, you would call it. You will call it the man who represented the hopes of the youth of that time. And Salim Javed were able to slowly shift from Zanjeer into a film like Deewaar, which was almost he's a man working in the dockyard, and he takes control of the injustice being performed in the dockyard, and then of course he goes in a path of crime. If you look at these films, there's always a fight between the good and the evil. And Amitabh Bachchan is almost single-handedly taking on the evil within the evil. He's almost a man of justice in an evil setup too. He's got ethical problems with what is happening in a corrupt society itself. So it was amazing to see that transformation happen, and it changed the cinema of that time. What very important was that from the 70s right up to 80s, those almost 10 to 12 years, there was only one big superstar, and he changed the whole outlook of how cinema was conceived. You just needed to have Amitabh Bachchan in your film, and that's it. You would just go to see a film. And you won't believe it, Andy. There's very rarely a day when I see his film before I go to sleep. He just makes me feel so good. It makes me remember my childhood, my memories. And I'm saying so that India at that time was highly influential by characters being portrayed by Bachchan, because two things we love in India and we care about is cinema and cricket.
The two important things in life, right? Love it.
So, we were in that age where we thought that this is it, and we believed in this character.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's really interesting. And I find it interesting just to look at, like, in a way, kind of like the expansion of this character, because like in England back in the 50s, they had like an angry young man archetype in British theater and literature. And that kind of translated into some of their writings and plays, and then into their films. And then in the 70s, we see it here. And you can really see how there's use for this trope in such a variety of films, and how it expanded around the world, really. Like you could say Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver, he's an angry young man. Like you can see how other people felt exactly the same as the filmmakers like Salim Javed and the directors and the people telling these stories, that there are injustices going on in our society. This is a way we can tap into what people are feeling and give them somebody who they can potentially see kind of either as a hero who can kind of get them through, or as an anti-hero who, kind of falls to those things. And I think that's so interesting. And
I mean, he was called the rebellious hero because he was rebelling at everything,
Right, exactly. The other thing that I find interesting as I was kind of looking at all this is how, and this really speaks to kind of like how film movements work, where it's like you can really see how this works in a variety of different genres. Like we've got crime films, we've got kind of a romance film in Mealy, kind of like a disease, somebody's sick.
Yeah, but in these cases, you see, the Indian hero is supposed to do a bit of everything.
Well, you're right, sure.
And Bachchan he could do comedy, he could do action, he could play the brooding,
little bit of
anger, rebellious character. He could take on injustice and do action sequences. I mean, that's how the whole persona of Bachchan was built. And he could sing songs too, because the songs needed that kind of flavor. Unlike films like Deewaar. But if you see Dawn, for example, we're going to discuss that, where he plays a double role. They did it very intelligently, Salim Javed. They wrote the script. There is one brooding, rebellious character of Dawn, which is the angry guy with all the gangsters. But there is this funny guy who's doing comedy and simpleton and
right, the street performer.
So I think the ability of Bachchan, who's actually a very serious person in real life, he's got a great sense of humor. But if you ever meet him or talk to him, you'll be amazed that he could ever do comedy and be so comfortable in doing this range of characters. And that was the amazing quality of Bachchan. He could speak for every person who wanted to see something of his. It was almost that he would hit the chords of every human being, whether it was women, if there's men, whether it was children, old grandfather. And that's the beauty about the success of this character. The angry young man is, of course, the fact that what he portrayed, but there were so many dimensions to the angry young man.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like everything, I mean, there is kind of an evolution with the character and what we see in it. It kind of peaks in the 70s, early 80s. And then it's like the socio-political climate in India kind of shifted a little bit, right? And so the popularity, from my understanding, of that character type started to decline. But it's still like you can still see it getting peppered around. So I mean, what was it that was shifting in society? Was it just audience preferences, or was it just a change in the politics?
I think a bit of everything. Bachchan, he was doing a film called Coolie,
Yep.
which was where he met with a massive accident.
Right. I remember reading about that.
And also, I think he had got into politics. His best friend, a very close friend and family friend, was then the Prime Minister, Rajiv Gandhi, and asked Bachchan to be part of the political. He won the elections from a constituency called Allahabad, where he belongs to. Also, Bachchan was the son of a great Hindi poet, Harivansh Rai Bachchan. So he got into politics, and I think that really did not go down too well with the accident, with the change of political scenario. It was a kind of a time which was, I think, I would call it the darkest phase of what really happened. And cinema in the 80s was sort of lost because we didn't have that phenomena of angry young man had almost diminished. And then we had all kinds of films coming up. I'm not a big fan of the films of the late 80s and till of course it regained in 93, 95 with Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, which is 95. But we had a kind of a mixed bag of films, not really following any particular genre. There were all kinds of films in
Gotcha.
the commercial setup. Of course, in the art house, there were always important films coming out from here and there, and there was a great movement. But in the commercial scene, we were sort of lost in that, and that purely happened with these two very important factors.
And that led the shift. Interesting. Well, as time went on, would you say that the character has kind of been adapted, reinterpreted into like more modern films like Pushpa, the KGF, Animal, Rocky? We seeing kind of that angry young man, that caricature, the trope in those more recent films?
Anyone who's growing up in India and any of the stars who's growing up or working in films and is inspired by the angry young man. Some shades of that. And Bachchan was such an inspiration to everyone. But I think that movement of what Bachchan created and what we had for those years, you only left with shades of that probably. But never has that movement come back or will come back. Because if you look at the way Bachchan stood, his stance, how cool he was, his clothes, he was able to carry himself. And that flair, the great advantage he had is that he could speak both the languages extremely well. He could speak his mother tongue, which was Hindi, because he was a son of a great poet who was a Hindi scholar. So dialogues and that conviction which he spoke his lines, and he could also speak great English because his mother, she was a lot to do with that as far as English is concerned. So there was a great mix between the East and the West in his growing up era. So it was just incredible the way he spoke his dialogues. I don't think there can ever be someone who could be like Bachchan. Yeah, shades would be here and there, but
shades, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that era was and will always remain
Well, and I suppose in some ways, like, you had film noir and now we kind of have neo noir, right? It's so you can see kind of like an evolution
You
in it.
see,
Yeah.
he's never come back.
Yeah, because it was so tied into so many specific elements. Obviously, he was such a huge part of it, Amitabh himself, but then also like the political environment and everything that kind of led to its rise.
Yeah. I mean, it's just incredible phase where he could make you feel for him and also cry for him, because he mixed anger with tears. And the rebellious nature didn't look anything else, but it made us feel that we could fight for injustice. We could take on. We should stand on our ground. And there is hope. Andy, that was the main thing for India in the 70s. The hope to continue to live, to fight. That was the incredible quality about what Bachchan gave us. The moment he came on the screen, it was magical. I still see that style, that way he spoke, his dialogues. There was this incredible quality about his face. I mean, he wasn't a great good looking person. He was a tall, lanky, but there was this persona about him. And you got to feel that persona when you meet him, because you never get that sense. And then he would appear on the screen, and then it was 3 hours, because in those days, if you don't make a 3 hour long film, the theaters would say that, why are you releasing this film, because people are paying for 3 hours, so they had to be 3 hours. Can you imagine a single star or a human being entertaining you for 3 hours, and you'll be mesmerized, absolutely mesmerized for those 3 hours? And that was the persona of Amitabh Bachchan. He was God, and he's treated as God. The fact that he tweets one word or one line, people believe that that's the truth, even today.
Wow.
I mean, if you're going to come and stand and want your children to be named, or you want to continuously just see him for a second, it's like almost looking at God. And he became that. He became the symbol of hope. So when he won the elections, and people had that, I think that transcended into a reality which people weren't willing to accept. They were willing to see him on the screen and enjoy that moment, but I'm not sure whether that really worked. I mean, he won the election with sweeping majority, because Bachchan standing in elections, there's no question. But it brought in the political atmosphere and trouble for him, which he was not prepared, because he was not a politician.
Sure. No, I can see that. I can see that. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to look at some of the core components that define this movement and trope. Let's talk about more of the people who are involved in this. Directors like Yash Chopra, Ramesh Sippy, Prakash Mehra are often associated with Angry Young Man films. What do you think they are bringing to this movement, and is their unique style contributing to this archetype?
Prakash Mehra was the first one in terms of he directed Zanjeer. He wanted actually a romantic hero called Devanand first, and several other heroes. And it was Salim Javed who had spotted, like I said, Amitabh Bachchan in Millie, and they suggested Bachchan to it. And I think that was the beginning. And not only did Prakash Mehra continue that tradition, because he made films like Mukaddar Ka Sikandar, Lavaris, where he sort of worked with this angry young man, but he also, later in the years, when he made a film called Sharabi about a drunkard, there was still that anger, the rebellious anger within him. And that was the beauty of Amitabh, that he transcended his role in a Prakash Mehra film to a drunkard, but never gave up that essence of an angry young man. And I think Manmohan Desai tried it in a different way when he made films like Amar Akbar Anthony, or when he made his later films, all the films. I mean, if you really look at it from the point of view of his success, the two directors who were parallel in his career, more than Yash Chopra, was Manmohan Desai and Prakash Mehra. But Yash Chopra, who's the father of Aditya Chopra, who made Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Yash Chopra is the father of the boy, and that was the break. Which, I mean, that was Aditya Chopra's first film before he set up the big empire today. Dilwale, as you know, is running till today from 1995.
I know, it's crazy.
So Yash Chopra, who was known for romantic films, who was known for softer films, he came from a tradition of being a brother of a very famous director who made films on social issues, very different than what you would imagine him to make. Went on to make films like Deewaar, which is again written by Salim Javed, Kala Patthar, which is in the coal mines, a very important film. It's one of my favorite films because it's really about the struggle of a coal miner in the coal mines and how he takes on to fight injustice. And it was a time when we were going through that period. There was a lot of trouble in our coal mines or mining, as I would say, and it was loosely inspired by Lord Jim, Joseph Conrad's Lord Jim. So you can see that the inspiration has come from a lot of literary book. I mean, people talk about what was John Osborne's play Look Back in Anger in the 50s, or Lord Jim in this case, which is Joseph Conrad's Lord Jim. But I think apart from what was happening in the political scenario and many of the days, there was literature also which sort of led to that. So three films of Yash Chopra, I would say, are instrumental in almost talking about the Angry Young Man. One is Deewaar, Kala Patthar, and Trishul. Trishul is again a family drama which has injustice. So all three very different. Deewaar is about the dockyard and the injustice, and then he joins the gang and he takes revenge. Trishul is the family drama where he feels injustice done to his mother, tries to destroy his own father in many ways because he wants to take justice in his hand and wants to fight against injustice. And Kala Patthar is about the coal mining. So these three directors did do a lot as far as the Angry Young Man is concerned, but there were also other directors like Rakesh Kumar
Sure. Yeah, I was just use those as examples, but yeah.
who carried on. Like they made films like Mr. Natwarlal, and Bachchan was portraying so many films, but they were all emerging out of these directors. I mean, the fact that he was so busy with these directors that he really had time to work with many other directors. And then, of course, later in the 90s, he wanted to try younger directors and he wanted to make different films. There was a film called Agnipath, which is much later in his life in the 90s. And there, too, he tried to portray the angry young man and almost had an Al Pacino kind of, if you look at that film, Agnipath, he tried to have an Al Pacino kind of voice and thing. The film didn't succeed that well.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
So it was the period after politics, and after that he was making a comeback. But like I said, it never had that impact of the period which we really talk about, which is from Zanjeer. Yeah, almost 10 years. 10 years, I would say, till Coolie, which was 83. So 73 to 83 is really a period where you would see this impact.
I was reading about how like different film centers around India that do films in different languages, how they were kind of attempting this as well. Like I saw like Rajinikanth was kind of like in the Tamil films was kind of working to play the angry young man there. Chiranjeevi in Telugu. Did those ever really kind of take off, or was Amitabh just such a presence that they just never really grew as much?
No, I'm sure that they were deeply influenced, and Rajinikanth talks about it. And Rajinikanth is a huge superstar, but Rajinikanth had his own persona. You see, for the Tamil films, he's still working. He's still his films. People start screening them from 6 a.m. Rajinikanth is a craze in Tamil films. Craze means craze. Rajinikanth is a phenomena also, but with his own persona, his own style. He obviously took a lot of inspiration from Bachchan, but then he adapted it to his own style. So did Chiranjeevi. Chiranjeevi is a superstar in Telugu industry. His son is one of the actors in this film called RRR.
Really?
Yes.
I love that one.
Yeah. In fact, one of the sons is the main actor is his son.
Oh, really? Okay.
So
Great.
So they've been superstars in their own industries, Telugu and Tamil, and obviously they got inspired by Bachchan. I mean, who hasn't got inspired by Bachchan? Every star
Right.
coming in that era wanted to be by this rugged look and the way the hairstyle, powerful dialogue
The
delivery,
hair, yeah.
almost. There's one scene in Trishul which defines him. It's one of the scenes which I think is really so cool. He goes into this basti, which is this area I would call it, and there's these goons sitting down there, and with him he brings the ambulance with him. And
Right.
he's already said, listen, you guys are going to be bashed up by me and put into the ambulance and taken to the hospital. And the kind of loud cheers, you know that nothing can happen to Bachchan. Well, I must tell you another interesting thing. Well, there have been shots of, where Bachchan gets punched and things, and we've been more people in the Hindi-speaking belt were fine with it. But there have been cases in Telugu and Tamil where they couldn't take Chiranjeevi getting hit. And there've been riots in the theater. They've broken chairs. And so they would I mean the way they looked upon Chiranjeevi and Rajnikant, the Tamil and the Telugu public, they won't even look at even them getting a punch on themselves. So
wow, that's funny.
That was really funny.
Yeah, even if the actor is totally willing to do it, their fans are just like.
I mean, you have to get hit both sides, and So that was something which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, right. Now, I mean, we've talked a bit about Salim Javed, this writing pair that was so prominent and really kind of created the angry young man trope that Amitabh Bachchan played so well. Were there other screenwriters? I know, I mean, Salim Javed really kind of like is a story in and of themselves because they turned screenwriters into like celebrities, really, like writing their names on the posters.
One of the things which I forgot to talk about is that Bachchan played in many, many movies this character called Vijay.
Right, I noticed that. It was a lot of them, yeah.
Yeah, so it would be Vijay Khanna, Vijay Varma, Vijay this, but Vijay he almost became Vijay. And this was sort of drawn by Salim Javed, who had, I think people could identify with Vijay when they thought that they should be just this name.
That was the persona that they wanted, yeah.
Coming in different characters and different, because finally they wanted to continue to have that feeling that he's the same angry young man, even though he's portraying different kinds of roles. And people could really channelize their frustration onto his on-screen persona with Vijay, So that was something which they coined. Now, when Salim Javed came into the picture in the cinema, people really didn't...
an important moment, though, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the writers were not getting that kind of attention, first of all, they were being recognized. The posters which were put up on the streets all over, because we had a tradition of posters being put up on the walls and everything. Now, the municipal doesn't allow you. In Calcutta, if you go, you would see posters all over the wall. It's an incredible sight. And even in Kerala, when you see Malayalam films, the posters put up all over. But in those days, in Bombay and other places, you will have posters. And Salim Javed insisted that their name would come right up there. And the kind of, they were charging 25 lakhs at that time, which was unheard of. So they brought the position of the writers as one of the most important part of a film. And they said that it's the writers who are creating these films and they need to be given that prominence. And I think Salim Javed are responsible single-handedly for not only giving credits to the writers, but dominating the scene. I mean, they had hits after hits after. You had a script from Salim Javed, you didn't need anybody else. Because they created the persona of angry young man. They created the persona of Bachchan. They created for those 10 years till they parted ways. Salim Javed also parted ways. They just did there's a show on the Netflix called Angry Young Man, which
Yeah, I wish it streamed on our local Netflix over here in the States. I wasn't able to watch it, but it sounds fascinating.
Yeah,
it's kind of their story. Yeah,
it's their story, and they are phenomena because there's Salim was known more for his screenplay. Javed Akhtar was known more for his dialogues. One of the biggest success of Bachchan was the way he delivered dialogues, not only emphatically, but the lines, the punch lines. And I don't think that English subtitles have ever been able to do justice to it.
Yeah, because I was reading something, and I can't remember which film it was, or it might have actually been several films, where there are just lines of dialogue that people would just memorize because of how Bachchan said it. And it was just like so powerful. And it became such like a common thing to just go around saying these. And I suppose every movie has their quotes, I mean.
But he had monologues, Andy. He had monologues, and he had, the lines.
Yeah, that's what's fascinating.
And there would be booklets which would come out with his dialogues because Salim Javed's scripts, and you would get it in the theaters, and then you could just recite it. The fact is that when I was restoring Sholay recently, I was speaking the dialogues before it would come because it became like textbook for you. It was almost so powerful, so beautifully written, and it had a great sense of humor, and still so easily understood by the common mass. And that was very important, that a common man could speak those dialogues and could recite it and could identify himself with that flair and that powerful way Bachchan spoke those lines on the screen. And people would throw coins. I remember going to a Bachchan film and he would appear on the screen. My God, you couldn't hear a single dialogue. There was euphoria. And people just stood up and throwing coins and rejoicing.
My goodness.
A Bachchan release would mean a festival in your life. It's almost that it's been the most happiest moment. And you have to believe me to feel at that point of time what it meant for people. That he was bringing that sense of hope, almost like a festival, that there is going to be the good times to come.
Sure.
And it was all coined by Salim Javed. They knew the pulse of the people, and they were taking it from what they were seeing around themselves, because they were also very grounded people. They came from different parts of the country. Javed Akhtar's father was a poet himself, so he had that long tradition of poetry. That's why today he writes beautiful lyrics in so many films. And his son is Farhan Akhtar, who directed this film called Dil Chahta Hai. And his daughter also is a director. So they've had a long tradition of literature, of flair for languages. And I think that really helped in building this image of the angry young man.
They obviously were such a key part in this whole thing. Did other writers come in after them and kind of take up the mantle of writing these Angry Young Man films? I mean, I know all 10 that we are going to discuss, they weren't written by them, but they certainly wrote a good chunk of them. Did other writers come in and start doing that? And did they end up having any of the same sort of like popularity as writers? Or is it just kind of a Salim Javed thing?
Well, I think, there were so many writers at that time. If you really look at the tradition in the 50s and the 60s, they were writers who were deeply inspired by literature. They were very fine writers, but one never heard of them in terms of that kind of popularity. There were many writers who tried to take that mantle with Salim Javed. There were writers like Kader Khan, who was also playing an actor. He tried to write a few scripts. He became a constant writer with Manmohan Desai and Prakash Mehra, apart from Salim Javed. Or there were many writers. They were writers, but we came in the 50s. Writers like K. Abbas, who were socialist, who were humanist. They were because India was moving towards a sort of socialism at that time. The issues were different, so they were highly inspired from literature, and they were adapting novels mostly in the 50s. 60s was an era of romantic films, so there were writers who were writing different kind of subjects. But I don't think anyone could take the place of Salim Javed. There were many who attempted to write like him. Kadir Khan was one of them in the commercial cinema. Kadir Khan was an actor who worked extensively with Manmohan Desai and Prakash Mehra. There was another writer called Prayagraj who also worked with Manmohan Desai, but not the way Salim Javed wrote. No, I can't think of it.
Well, that's interesting because that means that they were really so tied into this entire thing, which is really fascinating. Let's talk. We've already discussed a number of the tropes. I just want to make sure that we're really kind of hitting them all. So, I mean, in these films, there's an anti-establishment feel to them. There's a rebellious protagonist kind of fighting against a corrupt system. I mean, it can be a corrupt system being a governmental oppression. It can be a company. There's a variety of different corrupt systems that we see. We're seeing a lot of social injustice, inequality, class struggle. That's a really big thing. And you've already kind of mentioned this reflection of there's a disillusionment and frustration of the youth at the time in India. And then as we said, there's incorporating all sorts of different genres. We're seeing action, we're seeing drama, we're seeing romance, we're seeing comedy, we're seeing crime. So it's kind of covering the gamut of all of this. Am I missing anything? Or I feel like...
No, I think this is perfect. This is perfect.
Yeah. And again, as you were saying, so much of this is embodied by Amitabh Bachchan in his performances. So much of it is embodied in the writing, in the screenplays that Salim Javed and some of these other writers are contributing. And that's kind of really what we're getting out of these films and it doesn't matter if it's heavier on the romance or heavier on the crime. It still is there. We're still seeing that front and center as kind of the core element of what we're watching here.
Yeah, because they forgot what affected them, what was the hurt the youth. They were seeing his anger and they were seeing justice being done. So they identified with him. For a moment, they got lost in those 3 hours and they identified with this character and they said, we can do it. And that was the hope which Bachchan gave us.
Yeah, yeah. I hear masala films brought up quite a bit. Some of these angry young man films would fall into into the masala film kind of umbrella, right? I think Liwaris is one of them that would... yeah. Can you just quickly define how would I tell the difference between a film watching something like Zanjeer that might not be masala versus something that would be masala?
What do you mean by a masala? Masala is...
Well, it's a mix of everything. It's kind of the spice and it's just everything mixed together, right?
So that's why when I spoke about Bachchan, he would do a bit of comedy, action, romantic, sing songs, play the angry young man. And that embodied everything in one film. I mean, you really see that in the Western film where they would be so brutally honest with that character, just being that. But if you look at Dawn, like I gave an example, which is a kind of one of the only caper films, which I would say absolutely my favorite caper film. It's a masala film in the end of the day because it has everything in it. Or a film like, most of these films, I would say, you could define it as a masala film. There is a sense that Zanjeer and Deewaar or Kala Patthar may not be defined in many ways as a masala film, but they still be masala because there was so many other things in the film which catered to being what we called pure entertainment.
Well, that's what I was wondering because I saw that Liwaris it was marked as a masala film, but I'm like, well, so many of these also have music and comedy and everything, so they all seem to fit.
Hindi films, you need to have music and songs, but in Deewaar, Amitabh is not singing a single song, so they really worked with that character and they said that he is the angry young man, but he's not going to sing a song. And that's why you see in a film like Dawn, they've broken him down to two different characters. There's that
Yeah.
the second guy who emerges in the second half. He is singing songs and he's doing everything right, while the one who's the Don actually.
He's the angry young man.
But to be really honest, masala films got to be defined more with films to come later. And then people looked at these films and said there was masala in it. The real masala films were films which were poorly written, according to me, which had a bit of everything in it. It would define in segments. It was never sort of compiled as a whole script. It would almost be that we've got to have an action scene here, we've got to have drama here, we've got to have songs here, we're going to have, it's becoming too intense, let's break into a song. It's becoming too intense, let's have a comedy track. And the comedy track had nothing to do with the real plot of the film. And the songs also would break in. And that emerged a lot in the 80s and early 90s when the masala films took over. So now when you look back, people have started saying, was there masala in the time of Bachchan? Well, at that point, it wasn't defined as masala films because they were defined as angry young man. Masala films were much later, and they've been sort of put into that. So I wouldn't really call the phase of those 10 years as much masala as what were the years to come later. And it came mostly with bad writing and films broken into segments and catering to where scenes would appear on the set and the actors had to perform, and there would be parallel tracks, all kinds of things.
My goodness. Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you for kind of clarifying that for me. All right, well, let's jump into the movies. We're going to be discussing 8 films. So I know it's normally 10, but this time we're going to discuss just 8 films that feature Amitabh Bachchan playing an angry young man in one form or another. The films we're including are Zanjeer, Deewaar, Meeli, Trishul, Dawn, Mukaddar Ka Sikandar, Kalia Pathar, and Shakti. 5 of these will be part of our main discussion, and the other 3 will be our member bonus conversation. If you'd like to become a member, so you too can hear the full conversation, visit truestory.fm/join. That's trustory.fm/join. It's $5 a month or $55 a year. You also get access to all the episodes from the podcasts that are part of the Next Reel family of film podcasts, CinemaScope, The Film Board, Movies We Like, The Next Reel, and Sitting in the Dark. Plus, you'll get all episodes early and ad-free. Let's kick things off. Let's jump into Zanjeer. This is 1973, directed by Prakash Mehra. The story of the film, Zanjeer, follows the story of Vijay. As we've said, there's a lot of Vijay's we'll be seeing. An honest police officer haunted by the murder of his parents during his childhood. As he navigates the corrupt world of crime and politics, he finds himself increasingly disillusioned with the system. His anger and determination to seek justice drive him to take on the powerful criminals and corrupt officials who operate above the law. Amitabh Bachchan's intense portrayal of Vijay set the standards for the angry young man archetype and cemented his status as a superstar. The film's themes of personal vengeance, social injustice, and the fight against corruption resonated strongly with audiences and established Zanjeer as a landmark of the angry young man movement. This film really, we're seeing this kind of this personal trauma in this character, this quest for justice, that reflect the themes of disillusionment and frustration that we've been talking about in all of these films. And it really, as we said, starts here. So what is it that really exemplifies and made this so important of a film with Zanjeer that characterized the angry young man movement?
Zanjeer was the beginning of, you would call it, the angry young man. When they wrote the script, Salim Javed, they were looking for stars to play this role. They offered it to a big romantic superstar. And that's why it's important to talk about it, because they offered it to Rajesh Khanna, who was a big romantic superstar, really huge. And then to Devanand, because they couldn't think of, they hadn't found that characters yet. So when Prakash Mehra was told that by Salim Javed, that why don't you look at this person, Amitabh Bachchan, who they have seen in films like Bombay to Goa, which was again a comedy, and but they saw the intensity in him. Or a film called Anand, or Millie. Prakash Mehra was a little worried because it was with a newcomer. I don't think at that point when he did this role, really that it was basically a revenge drama, which is what the Indian films really work on, is to fight for justice.
Yeah. When I read even like some of these other actors that they asked to do it, they didn't want to do it because they saw themselves as like, I have a romantic persona. I don't want to be somebody like that.
Absolutely. And I think it was destiny, Andy, because this film was going to change the whole way cinema was going to be seen after that. And any movement which begins with the very first film, I don't think you sort of realize it at that point of time, that how is it going to.
No, yeah, right,
and,
right.
And this was one of them, because they only knew about Bachchan, and they were not confident that whether he would really work with this film. Everybody was thinking that, we can't find those two big heroes. Let's try with this actor. Salim Javed were very convinced, and that's the best part about them, because they've been so convinced about characters they write and who they recommend and what they want to bank on. And I think it was Bachchan's portrayal, the way he came across as a cop, and then his whole advent to take and fight for the injustice, and this character of Ajit, the villain, which is with his dialogue. He was playing the role of Teja. He was called Teja in the film, and also it had another immigrant, an Afghan character played by Pran Sher Khan. So it sort of had this amazing quality of fighting injustice, that anger, which, as a cop, he was portraying what was happening in that country all around us, and then emerging with that hope that you can still take justice. If you're not getting justice, you need to take, because this is about family pride, and they killed my parents. It's something which I need to take revenge with. And I think the manner in which he performed, and he came across in that screen so convinced, there was a conviction in him. It was so convincing that people identified with Vijay, because it talks about corruption, it talks about bribery, it talks about all the social evils present in the society at that time. And at the same time, it's an action film. It's an action, crime, revenge. It has everything in it. It's got songs. So it was a film which was one of the earliest cop dramas, which did so well. It's many ways it had kind of a film noir kind of feel too in many of the scenes and things. But I think Zanjeer really emerged as his first massive successful film.
Yeah, because before this, Bachchan wasn't really, I mean, the films he was in, he wasn't necessarily like the central character. He was smaller.
No,
and so this was a big opportunity for him.
He was almost written off. Let me put it this way. He did some very important roles, but he didn't have a success. And not in this way as Zanjeer did. It went on to win many awards. It won, of course, awards at the Film Fair, which was one of our most important awards which we had at that time. I don't think of it much now, but in those days, he got nominated for Best Actor, and Best Film got nominated. But it went on to win for Best Lyrics and Best Story, Salim Javed, and Best Screenplay. Simply because the recognition of the change, and the fact
you can see that
they were taking things from what was prevalent in their times, and with powerful dialogues. I think those were the essence of what the film left an impression on, and the emergence of the angry young man.
Well, and also, I mean, I have to say that especially this film, it really, gives you characters that are so fun and enjoyable to watch. I mean, obviously, Vijay is like angry, and he's not just angry, he's like over the top angry as a cop, which is why he's had to move precincts so often, because he is a little too much in his arresting procedures, which is fun. But then you already mentioned Shere Khan, who is one of the craziest characters that I've seen in any of these films. And I had so much fun watching him. He was like a gambling den villain that the first time he meets Vijay, just because of the confrontation that they have, completely turns around and like, oh, I'm just going to be a mechanic now, and go straight. Like, it was so fun to watch, and I had a great time kind of seeing how this character could work through and run into these different types of people.
Yeah, but that's the quality of how Hindi films were written at that time, because you needed to come across different characters. Shere Khan was played by a very senior actor called Pran. Pran has played in many of Bachchan films. He's played important character roles. He's there in Dawn. He's there in so many of his films, right through his career. In fact, one of the most important character roles. And there is that image of Pran, which really goes with the fact that he could be a great supporter of Bachchan in the film, and helps him to take revenge. And also, he's a Pathan. He's come from Afghanistan. It talks about the relationship which Indians had for Pathans, because we had many Pathans in our country, and there were a few actors also who came from Afghanistan, and his close relationship between the two. But I think the quality about what these films also showed was the secular nature of the way films were being portrayed. You had an informer named De Silva, who's half sort of insane, and you had a touch of Christianity in that. You had a Muslim character, then you had Hindu, and that was the beauty of the films in those times, because India is such a secular country. We have people from all religion, from Sikh, from Buddhists, Jain, Christians, Muslims, and things. And our films evoked that at that time. Even though they were written by Salim Javed, but they evoked that secularism. And every film you'll find that there is a deep sense of secularism. So you have a Muslim character who's almost like a close confidant, and a person. And I look back at these films and I just think where we have gone today, where we have gone, because Amar Akbar Anthony, which is another Bachchan film, it's three brothers with three different names: Hindu, Muslim, Christian. So universal. And so is this film, It would be subtly put in, these characters, but there you are with that.
Interesting. Let's shift and talk about Deewaar. This is from 1975, Yash Chopra's film. Deewaar tells the story of two brothers, Vijay and Ravi, who take divergent paths in life. Vijay, the older brother, turns to a life of crime after facing poverty and injustice, while Ravi becomes an honest police officer. As their paths cross and their ideologies clash, the film explores themes of morality, family, and the consequences of one's choices. Amitabh Bachchan's portrayal of Vijay as a complex anti-hero driven by a sense of anger and rebellion against the system really epitomizes the angry young man archetype. The film's exploration of the gray areas between good and evil and its commentary on social inequality made it a landmark of the movement. This is one that, reading up on, seems to be like one of the biggest of these films. And
you're talking about one of the greatest dialogues in Indian cinema. Also,
that's what, yeah, right, yeah.
Ki mere paas maa hai. I've got mother.
That I read about how popular that line is. Yep.
That Deewaar, I can keep talking about, because it was written by Salim Javed, of course, and again the character Vijay, directed by Yash Chopra. It had a lot of inspiration. Salim Javed were big fans of a film called Ganga Jamuna, film by Dilip Kumar, which had two brothers on different sides of, one is joined a dacoit gang and one has joined the cop. So they were inspired. It was a huge success in its time. They also were big fans of Mother India, one of Mehboob Khan's iconic films. Again, had a very similar similar metaphor and similar characters, and set in a rural setup.
Okay.
So I think when they wrote this script, they were seeing what was happening around Bombay. There was this big gangster called Haji Mastan, who was controlling the dockyard. They were inspired by that real life character, and they wrote this whole film set in, for Indians, mothers would always be eternal, and it comes from not just the mother figure, which is mother, but also from religious sentiments of the mother deity, and we worship Mother Kali and Durga. These are powerful goddesses who we worship,
Right.
and
Yeah, sure.
it emerges that we really worship our mother. And Deewaar is famous for I think one of the most important dialogues of Indian cinema. Mere paas maa hai. I've got mother. It's where the two brothers meet, under the bridge.
And the bridge you're talking about, this is a scene in the film where the two brothers meet and they're having this conversation at night under this bridge.
Yes, and his younger brother, whom he meets under the bridge and who's playing the role of a cop. And he's a cop because of his elder brother. And the conflict through dialogues. Vijay, played by Amitabh Bachchan, is already become part of the gang, and he's a big-time gangster. His younger brother, played by Shashi Kapoor, another very fine actor, meets him under the bridge. And of course, he's become a cop by the hard work of his elder brother, whom he loves. And now the conflict starts because the brother has been assigned to catch hold of the gang and catch hold of his own brother. And the fact is that Amitabh Bachchan or Vijay says that I've got everything. I've got bank balance, I've got car, you asked me, I've got everything in the world. But he says, you got everything, but I've got I've got mother. Mother is the symbol for any Indian. It's symbolic that it's a symbol of the land also, which is mother. We call Dharti Ma, which is mother to us. The symbol of goddess, which is mother to us. And the real mother, which is the one who's given birth to us. That was so amazing. To write those dialogues and to think of it by Salim Javed is incredible. And then, of course, when Amitabh is in his initial days in the dockyard, where he actually takes on the goons, he gets saved because he's wearing a badge which says 786, which is actually the symbol which says in the name of Allah. So that badge is very, it's very auspicious and religious in many ways.
Yeah.
And that's again, what I was talking about, like Zanjeer. Deewaar has a secular nature to it that you feel that these films were being created at that time, so beautifully written and part of the way the culture in India was being represented through these films.
Well, and you really see that in this one specifically because there is this refusal as a young boy that he shows in actually going into the temple with his mother and his brother. And he retains that refusal through the film until he finally goes in and has his own confrontation in that, kind of like defying the deity, right? Like he's kind of like demanding justice really to save mom. And it's like, that's the moment that like brings him back in to kind of like have that confrontation. And so, but again, that's going back to this idea of giving us these religions and everything throughout the film.
And the funny thing about this film is that Mr. Bachchan, in one of his interviews, said that the denim blue shirt worn with khaki pants and a rope dangling over his shoulder was actually the result of a mistake by a tailor. Because the knotted shirt and a rope on the shoulder in Deewaar was an adjustment of an error in stitching shirt too long. So he knotted it. And and you won't believe it, that became really the image of Bachchan, which people started copying all over India.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
It became a symbol that you saw that knotted look, denim shirt, and it became another symbol of the anti-establishment, anti-hero, the way the justice had to be performed. And you had so many people. And Deewaar actually went on to inspire many of the regional films in Telugu, in Tamil. There were many remakes made of that film because I think it's almost one of the most powerful films of really portraying the angry young man to the fullest because he doesn't deviate to sing songs. He has a romantic relationship in the film. Again, it was the way it was very bold in those times. A lot of people, portrayed by Praveen Babi, whom he has this relationship, lived in relationship, which was unheard of in India in those days. So it wasn't that this film, according to many people, was portraying things which were not common in India. You couldn't have a lived-in relationship in those days.
I
Uh,
see.
and
Interesting.
films would morally be right in portraying that kind of stuff because that would go against it. But here you had a character because they said he was on the wrong side. He could have had a character. He could be having a lived-in relationship and a girlfriend. Also, there were smoking scenes, and the characters were smoking, and the girl was smoking. That was the big thing.
Interesting.
And the lyrics, there are songs in the film because the cop is singing songs. Shashi Kapoor, he's singing songs. The lyrics were written by a very famous poet called Sahir Ludhianvi. So it's incredible that in this very anti-establishment kind of film, very hard-hitting, it's almost like a family drama in many ways because that's what it is actually. The conflict within one's own family and in a society,
Right. Yeah. Very much so.
and the symbol of mother, which is what happens in the end. That he finally, in the end, the temple he doesn't go to, he dies in that temple.
Yeah.
You know, and that was incredible. I mean, the you can imagine the impact of that scene and that what it must have had in 75.
Oh, yeah. No kidding. No kidding. Let's talk about Trishul. This is Yash Chopra's film from 1978. Trishul revolves around, again, Vijay, the illegitimate son of a wealthy businessman who seeks revenge against his father for abandoning him and his mother. As he rises from poverty to become a successful businessman himself, he sets out to destroy his father's empire and reclaim what he believes is rightfully his. Bachchan's intense portrayal of Vijay captures the anger, determination, and moral complexity that define the angry young man archetype. The film's exploration of themes such as class inequality, family dynamics, and the pursuit of justice really struck a chord and established this as kind of another classic of this movement. How does his journey here from, I guess you could say, poverty to power reflect the angry young man's struggles against social and economic injustice and really kind of like class dynamics in Indian society at the time?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, who's he again? He's been left to fend for himself. He's unemployed. He is that representing that youth. His mother has been cheated by somebody who a rich businessman who promised to marry her and then abandons her. And the shot of him growing up and emerging, the first shot I remember very clearly even now, is the blast in the mine. It's the blast where you can see him walking through, almost portraying that the anger within him, which is emerging from him. And what does he go to do? He goes about fighting corruption in the whole building scenario in the construction business. And that's what is again Salim Javed very cleverly. Cities were being consumed with new constructions. They were emerging. This is 1978. The emergencies already happened in 75. So you had a new India sort of emerging with these new constructions, and they set the film in that sort of atmosphere.
In that world, right? Yeah.
The conflict between a father who doesn't know that his son is Amitabh Vijay and has gone on to marry and have his own children and family and everything, and how Vijay goes about destroying this large empire, which is what Yash Chopra set this up. But he has shown enough as a young man that he is grown in an atmosphere of extreme poverty. He is the angry young man. He is emerging from sort of atmosphere to take revenge. So he hasn't ever deviated. He's kept him angry young man right through. Even in terms of giving him songs, and I remember that he's participating in the songs, but he's not inherently ecstatic about singing it. So he's not sort of deviated from his character.
Interesting. Okay, he's performing, but it's not as
Yeah, it's not.
enthusiastic.
So they've remained, because again, this is Salim Javed. It's with a big star cast, some lead actors like Shashi Kapoor back again. In Deewaar, he played his brother, real brother, and here he's playing his step brother.
Yeah, kind of half brother, really, right?
Brother, yeah.
Well, and that's interesting because like one of the songs that Bachchan sings is the only reason he's doing it is to kind of provoke his half brother, who at this time doesn't know he's a half brother, right? Like he's in that club to do it. So yeah,
he doesn't know even. So it's interesting how they've woven this entire. And this was also 1978 when one of his most popular films also came out, Mukaddar Ka Sikandar. So this was the year where they wanted to probably have two different kinds of genres which Bachchan was playing in different settings. But common theme, Andy, in all these films which emerged is from where he came from.
yeah,
Deewaar, his mother's and his brother are left, and
they're all in poverty. Yeah,
very important in Deewaar is the dialogue which is written on his hand,
tattooed on his arm, right? Yeah,
the tattoo which is on his thing. Ki mera baap chor. My father is a thief.
Yeah.
So he's already, as a young kid, born in an atmosphere of a trade union leader. Then, of course, he's fending for himself, living in chawls and living in that kind of atmosphere. Trishul has the same kind of, many ways, theme is the same, that he's been left with his mother, who also dies in the film, played by a great actress called Wahida Rahman. She's still very active, and she was the lead actress in many of Guru Dutt's films. So Yash Chopra was very well known for putting big star casts together. Not in this film, but films like Kabhi Kabhi and many other films to come in. He put in a lot of big star casts. So I think thematically, the thought process of the Angry Man continued.
We've already mentioned it earlier. Let's talk a little bit about Kala Pathar. This is from 1979, Yash Chopra's film. Kala Pathar is set against the backdrop of a coal mine and follows the story of, again, Vijay, a disgraced naval officer seeking redemption. As Vijay works in the mine alongside other laborers from diverse backgrounds, he becomes involved in their struggles against the corrupt mine management and the dangers of their working conditions. The film's explorations of themes such as labor rights, social inequality, and personal redemption, combined with Bachchan's powerful performance as Vijay, makes it a standout of a film. We've all seen plenty of this type of film of a disaster at a mine or something, wherever it may be, and people trying to figure out how to survive and get past that. We definitely have that here, but it's late in the film. Primarily, it's the struggle of the working class and dealing with the corruption of the owner. And that's, I think, a key part of it. And I don't know enough about the actual mining incident that this was also kind of loosely based on. I know there was one, but I don't know if that played into it or if it was just a mining incident that part of the film was patterned after.
When Kala Pathar was being conceived, and I did speak to Yash Chopra later, and he did say that he was deeply inspired by Lord Jim, Joseph
Conrad's novel, yeah.
So the character of Amitabh Bachchan, we plays Vijay again, Vijay Pal Singh. He's a ex-Navy captain and who goes to find redemption into the coal mines. Now, there was, in 1975, in Dhanbad, which is East India, there was a very massive coal disaster, which is, a lot of people died, 375.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of talk, Andy, of the reforms to take place in the coal industry and the mining conditions and the severe mining conditions in that time. And I think Salim Javed, they're so brilliant in seeing what is around them and adapting it and getting a bit of literature, a bit what had happened in 75, writing a script. Lord Jim the character, and I read Lord Jim, it sort of identifies so beautifully with Amitabh, because there's a shot in the film where Amitabh is after the ship is returned, and the ship doesn't sink while while the others have all died. He is walking to be court-martialed, and there are people shouting, and he's wearing that navy dress. That image has stuck with me. That symbolized in many ways what Joseph Conrad was trying to do in his novel. So it has borrowed. So it's a mixture of Angry Young Man, Joseph Conrad, the coal disaster, everything put together. And it came in '79 when Bachchan already had a huge hit with Mukaddar Ka Sikandar and the other films which we are talking about. And Kalak Patthar again had a massive star cast. Again, Shashi Kapoor, who was there in, we spoke about Zanjeer, and he was playing the brother there. He was playing the half brother in Trishul, is also in this film. Many of the actors are in this film, and Yash Chopra used to put this together. They put up a whole big set.
It was an impressive set. Like, they did some serious work in the mine and everything. It was great.
Yes. So the real Angry Young Man, if you really look at it from Kalapat's point of view, was when he actually is in the coal mine, and he starts fighting for the injustice of the coal miners, and he actually gets into the coal mining situation and defends the workers. That's, I think, what Bachchan identified with is the people, the poor people, the people of the working class, the people who are struggling to find ways to live a normal life, and the struggles of the mining workers. And here he's emerging as a superhero, taking on the mine owners, trying to get them basic human rights of not only getting great salaries, but
safe
to
working
get
conditions,
them normal human conditions and living conditions, and giving people an insight into what happens into the mining. And I think it was so well crafted by Salim Javed. Again, there was a character played by Shatrughan Sinha, Mangal Singh, whose arrival in the film with Bachchan. You see him fighting. He's also a person who's run away from jail and joins one of the being coal miners. And in the end, he becomes a friend of Bachchan. But all through, he was also a popular actor. But the dialogues he was given, and he had these very famous lines. It was incredible. I mean, I really think that Salim Javed not only created these characters, but they created these great lines, and with that flair that they became part of our culture. They became inherent part of our culture. I mean, we could identify with these lines, and we could speak these lines in a normal way of life. They became, in many ways, the Angry Young Man became our identity. So did this language of Salim Javed.
That's interesting, where it was kind of adopted by people in society, and like that angry young man was used as a way of personal expression against the system that everybody was seeing every day, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap things up talking about our last film, Shakti, from 1982, directed by Ramesh Sippy. Shakti explores the complex relationship between Ashwini, a retired police officer, and his son, again, Vijay, who turns to a life of crime after feeling betrayed by his father. As their paths diverge and their ideologies clash, the film delves into themes of family, duty, and the consequences of one's choices. The casting of Bachchan as Vijay and Dilip Kumar as Ashwini added depth and gravitas to the film, with their performances capturing the emotional turmoil and moral dilemmas faced by their characters. Shakti's exploration of the father-son dynamic and its commentary on the cycle of violence and the cost of upholding one's principles made it a very compelling entry in the angry young man genre. This is a fascinating film because we're really looking at this father-son relationship, this conflict between duty, family loyalty, and the way that particularly the way that the father balances pretty poorly, I'd say, between duty and family loyalty. What insights do you see that this is really kind of giving into the kind of the angry young man movement?
First of all, this was a film which was played by the great Dilip Kumar, the most iconic actor who not only Salim Javed looked upon, but also Amitabh Bachchan. Amitabh Bachchan's favorite hero was Dilip Kumar. When he came into the film industry, he talks about how he saw Dilip Kumar in a restaurant and he stood in line to get an autograph from him. So Dilip Kumar was
Wow.
this absolutely giant of an actor. Also, right through his period of the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, he dominated as one of India's greatest actors. He was also very, very literary in many ways because he spoke so beautiful. His Urdu was, especially his diction, his way of manner of acting. He's worked on several films, and he's inspired a whole generation of actors from that period.
And this was the only film that the two of them did together, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So there was getting them two together. Dilip Kumar and Bachchan was a big. Even though this film didn't do too well, but I loved the film, and I think one of the reasons was that the confrontation scenes between the father and son. And I had never seen a film where you would, in Indian films, I mean, where you would portray that confrontation, because it wasn't really looked upon to have confrontation scenes between fathers of this kind. And
Really?
again,
Interesting.
it's if you look at Deewaar, it was switched over here. The father is a cop, also very righteous, and the son, who misunderstands the way father thinks, takes up and joins a gang, which is what upsets the father, and goes to the other side of the law. In the end, like in Deewaar, the brother has to kill his real brother. Here, the father has to kill his real son. Amitabh Bachchan, he shoots him at the airport on the tarmac. In fact, at the takeoff points of aircrafts, where Bachchan is running, and in the end, he's killed. And in the end, he says that I just loved you, and you never understood me. And again here, the fight for that, you sacrifice your own son to fight what is right, is what the theme is, like in Deewaar. So I think they used these two giant actors, and they hoped that it would really bring in the best of both of these actors, portraying what they have always captured, the angry young man within Bachchan, because he's angry with the system, he's angry of the role his father is playing as a cop, and he's angry with the way his life is moving on, and he takes on his father, and the father is part of a system, part of a way of how the government is at that time, and how he's looking at the role of what his son is getting into. And I think that the highlights of the film is that confrontation, is just to see them both on screen perform, and I just loved Bachchan's performances. It's so difficult to portray a son who's so deeply hurt, and I'm sure that he would have had a lot of anxiety when he was performing in front of Dilip Kumar, the great actor.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, I mean, the father could use some lessons in how to communicate. I think that's one of his big problems, is he never really kind of communicates his perspective to anyone, to his son in particular. And then we see that in a lot of films, right? People, it's just a human tendency. Some people just really struggle with actual communication. And I think that ends up really benefiting the film, because you can see how much something like that can hurt somebody when it comes from your father. And you think, my father doesn't even care about me. I was kidnapped, and my father would rather stick with the law than not follow the law exactly just to save his own son. And you can see why the son is broken. And it plays really well into this. And it's not necessarily like his father is like a corrupt police officer or anything like that. It's the opposite. His father is such a letter of the law guy that he puts it above his family. And that was a really interesting element in this film.
Yeah, but I think the film didn't do too well because one, that I think it became too personal, and they couldn't identify at a larger picture the audience, even though they had these two iconic actors. People wanted to see Dilip Kumar and Amitabh Bachchan together. But I think one of the reasons why this film didn't do well at the box office, that it was coming closer to 1982-83.
It's the end of that era, right?
Which was almost coming to an end of that era of the angry young man. And when this became too personal, they couldn't identify as well as they should have, because
Interesting.
they're not many films which deals personally with relationship with your father or mother, where you almost are made to believe that you have an ideal or a personal relationship which is almost ideal with your parents. And this film was dealing with that, with just the fact that it was a misunderstood relationship father did not have, which is actually too real for people to believe, because that's what really is happens at home, and happens many times, where we don't have time to talk to our dad, or dad doesn't talk to us. It was too close for people to identify, and also the role of Rakhi. She played the mother. In all his films, she's played his girlfriend, or is going to be wife, or romantically linked with. In Kala Patthar, she was the other lady doctor who is running the small clinic in the mines, and his love interest was Rakhi in the film. Here, she's playing his mother. So I think, in many ways, even though I loved the film, I think it was very well crafted. It had very subtle songs. He did sing songs in this one with Smita Patil, plays his wife. Smita was a very fine actress. She was an emerging actress, and a great actress of the Indian art house cinema, someone who we deeply admire as an actress. So he did sing songs there. But on whole, I think it didn't do too well, even though it's a great film. What I really like is the way Bachchan and Dilip Kumar performed, their dialogues, their scenes together. And it's a film worth watching, because it's got two iconic actors of Indian cinema who have given so much to people in different ways. I'm happy we are ending with Shakti, because if you look at Amitabh Bachchan's career, and you call him the angry young man, and you say that he was the angry young man, the inspiration has to come from Dilip Kumar. Because Dilip Kumar was a man who embodied great flair for comedy. He did action, he did romantic hero. He also did roles of being angry in many ways. I think Mr. Bachchan always says, and will always say, that if there's one star who inspired him and he thought of him as a great actor, was Dilip Kumar.
That's who it is. Interesting.
And Shakti was that.
Well, I mean, this film is a great closing all of this. It's a great way to kind of have seen this angry young man archetype and this whole movement of what kind of became a huge run of films. And over the course of this 10 years, we've really kind of come to a point where, as you said, we've seen it shift into a place where now it's a much more personal type of story. And I mean, I guess you could say we saw something like that with Mealy, but by this point, this is very much a good way to kind of see how it started drawing to a close. So you can get a full sense of what we were getting with this angry young man movement over this period of time in India.
Yeah.
Shivendra, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've learned a lot. It's been really interesting. Thank you again so much for joining me. Eye-opening, and I'm sure our listeners will come away with a deeper appreciation for the angry young man movement, with definitely for Amitabh Bachchan and his enduring impact on Indian cinema. Do you have anything you want to plug real quick?
No, I just want to thank you, Andy, for doing this, and thank you for highlighting one of the most important chapters in Indian cinema. Amitabh Bachchan is not just my hero, but he's a hero of so many millions of Indians who just love him and adore him and have been inspired by him. And I hope that people all over the world will be able to see these Angry Young Men films. And if there's any way we can do festivals of these films for people to understand this most important period of the 70s and the early 80s, which really reflects in many ways what India was all about.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I'll put a link in the show notes for the Film Heritage Foundation so people can see what you're up to. And yeah, if there's any other things that you're doing, I mean, you already said you're going to be screening a film at an upcoming festival. It was at Venice. Is that where you said you're going to be screening?
No, we are screening in Venice, Do Biga Zameen, 2 Acres of Land, directed by Bimal Roy, which we restored with the Criterion Collection and Janus Films. And then, of course, in Toronto, we have Sholay, another Amitabh Bachchan film of 1975, which is a magnum opus, India's biggest film, which we just restored. And we had a screening in Bologna at the Il Cinema Ritrovato Festival, but it's going to be screened in Toronto on the 6th of September. Yeah. And then, of course, in New York Film Festival, it's going to have a screening. And then, of course, in London in October, before the producers decide to release it all over the world. So we are excited about that.
That's so exciting. That's another one that I'm very much looking forward to watching. So we'll have links for everything that you've got in the show notes. For our listeners, if you enjoyed this exploration of the Angry Young Man movement, I highly recommend diving into some of the films we discussed, as well as seeking out more of Shivendra's insightful work on film preservation and Indian cinema history. Shivendra, again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Andy.
Next month, we'll be cracking the code of the heist film genre. We'll explore how these thrilling cinematic capers have captivated audiences for decades, from the meticulous planning and daring execution to the inevitable twists and turns. We'll delve into the genre's evolution, from the classic one last job trope to the more complex and subversive takes on the formula. Along the way, we'll examine what makes a great heist film tick, from the charismatic ensemble casts to the nail-biting suspense and the oh-so-satisfying payoffs. So get ready to join me as we embark on a pulse-pounding journey through the most iconic and audacious heists in cinema history, uncovering the secrets behind the genre's enduring appeal. It's time to put on your best disguise, study the blueprints, and get ready to pull off the ultimate cinematic heist. Thank you for joining us on CinemaScope, part of the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network. Music by Orcus and Young Rich Pixies. Find us and the entire Next Reel family of film podcasts at truestory.fm. That's TRUSTORY.fm. Follow us at The Next Reel on social media, and if you're enjoying the show, leave us a rating and review wherever you listen. As we part ways, remember, your cinematic journey never ends. Stay curious.